welcome to the Stearns County Board of Adjustments meeting for September 12th, 2024. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a couple of announcements to be made. If you are in possession of a cell phone or some other type of paging device, we ask that you put it on the silent mode at this time. Also, please note that all testimony is being tape recorded for the record, and if you're going to speak, we'd ask you to state your name and your address first for the record, and then go ahead with your input after you've been recognized by the chair. Members of the Board of Adjustment are appointed by the County Board of Commissioners with one member from each of the 5 commissioner districts, one member at large, and one member appointed from the Planning Commission. I'll give a brief overview of the proceedings this evening. First, I will read the variance request, and that will open the public hearing. While I'm reading the request for your item, I would ask that the applicant or their representative come forward and sit in front of the board at the microphone. The applicant and or his representatives will be asked to state their name and their address for the record, and then Environmental Services staff will provide a brief overview of the request, the staff report, and if any correspondence has been received regarding that request. The applicant or the representative will then provide their input, their corrections, concerns, comments. Once the applicant and or the representative has provided their testimony, the board will discuss the request and ask questions of the staff or of the applicant. Upon completion of the board questions, I will then ask if there's anybody in the audience which wishes to speak to that request. If there is, we ask that you come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and then give your testimony. When all the testimony is complete, I'll ask the board for a motion to close the public hearing. Once the motion has passed to close the public hearing, there will be no further input from the audience, from the applicant, or Environmental Services staff unless recognized the chair or if board members want to have clarification. Our first item on
Madam Chair, can you please do the roll call?
Oh, the roll call, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I didn't flip the page over. Roll call. Rob, District 2.
Present.
Dan, at large, absent. Amy?
Yes.
District 5. Jill, District 1, absent. Bonnie Mossman, District 4, I'm here. Jason Weirman?
Present.
Planning Commission rep. And George Fiedler, District 3.
Yes, I'm here.
All right. All right, our first item on the agenda this evening is a request from Jamie and Kim Garretts of Albany from Section 6.9.5D of the Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439 to permit a feedlot with greater than 10 animal units to construct a feedlot structure 15 feet from a property line. The said ordinance requires a 50-foot property line setback for a feedlot registered for 10 animal units or more. The affected property is 13.21 acres. The south 700 feet of the east 820 feet of the southwest quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 1 in Track 126 North, Range 31 west of Crane Township, Stearns County, Minnesota. And the property address is 20204 435th Street, Albany, Minnesota, 56307. And our applicants present, could you give us your name and address for the record?
Jamie Garretts, 20204 435th Street, Albany.
Thank you. And if we could have a roll call of those who were able to visit the site. Rob?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes, and I had a conversation with his wife.
And I was there, and Jason,
Yes, and I briefly spoke to the wife as well about why I was there.
and George.
No.
All right, if we could have the staff report, please.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the proposal is to construct a feedlot structure 15 feet to the nearest property line, which is to the north. The proposed structure is a 56-foot by 128-foot cattle shed, which is indicated as structure number 1 on the feedlot footprint map included in your packet. The submitted permit application proposes 93 head of slaughter steers and heifers for 93 animal units and 30 head of beef calves for 6 animal units for a total of 99 animal units. The site is registered for greater than 10 animal units. Last registration was April of 2021 for the 99 animal units, and the current max allowed is the 99 animal units. Animal type on site is cattle. Some background is a 54-foot by 146-foot shed permitted for feedlot use that previously housed cattle is proposed to be eliminated, structure 5 in red on the map. The shed is already eliminated on site with a new residential dwelling being constructed in its location. The parcel to the north of the applicant's parcel is a 27.88 acre parcel, also zoned A40 and is owned by Werner and Mildred Garrett's. The adjacent parcel to the north does not currently have extra building entitlements nor any TDRs, which are transferable development rights. Ordinance section 6.9.5D states the property line setback and residential dwelling setback shall be applied unless at least one person or entity is the full or partial owner of each parcel and a 10-foot setback is maintained from the property line. The neighboring parcel to the west and north has a registered feedlot. It's registered for 44.7 animal units. Last registration was December of 2022 and had a previously permitted 44.7 AU maximum allowed. The surrounding parcels are all zoned A40 to this site request. Road access to the property is from that 435th Street. Environmental staff were on site on July 26, 2024 for a compliance inspection, and the site was deemed compliant with Minnesota Rule 7020 and the Stearns County Ordinance 439. Crane Township, the Cold Spring Record, the Star Post, and property owners within 500 feet of the property have been notified of this request. Also included in the staff report is your 7 findings of facts, and then your alternatives and recommendations. There are 3 of them. They're listed in your packet. And that is all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. And there was no correspondence?
Madam Chair, members of the board, I have not received any phone calls or letters or emails in regards to this request to date.
Okay, thank you. The applicant, if you would like to share with us your thoughts.
The only thing I'll say right now is I got signed statements here from the neighbors that they don't object.
Okay, and if you'd like to include those in the record, then you'd need to provide those copies to the county, and then they'll put those in the record. All right, thank you. All right, questions from the board?
I have a question for applicant, and I know your wife couldn't answer these, but I did ask her, were there any buried power lines, tile lines on these properties that are pointed out, fiber optics, gas?
In that area where we want to construct, no, there's nothing.
Okay, but on the property in general, is there anything that runs through there?
Oh, no, we don't even have a landline for the phone. The only power that would be buried is from the pole to the transformer, which is sitting kind of to the southeast of where we want to construct it. That's where the transformer is now.
Okay,
And that runs, if you're out there, it runs along the south side of the house.
okay. And then, any future plans on purchasing your mom and dad's acreage down the road?
I hope so,
Okay.
but we have nothing.
And then I just wanted you to clarify, so slaughter cows, how long will they be on the property before you feed them and ship them?
I
Can you-
figure on buying feeders, so I suppose it takes 15 months maybe.
Okay.
Roughly.
Okay, other questions from the board?
I have one for the applicant. I'm sure there's an agricultural reason, but why can't you turn the building the other way to meet that setback? You went east-west instead of north-south.
I suppose I'd have to move some more dirt to kind of say it would be impossible, but to the east of where it's proposed, it goes down. The ground goes down pretty fast.
And there is a LiDAR map within your packet too, so you can.
Okay, other questions from the board? Okay, having no additional questions, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this application? Anyone at all? Anyone wishing to speak to this application? Hearing none, we'd be open to a motion to close the public hearing.
Madam Chair, before we proceed with that, I will read these two received documents this evening into the public record.
Oh, that would be
please.
fine. Thank you.
Yep. So the first one just says, I have no objections to the proposed variance by Jamie and Kim Garrett's to put their feedlot 15 feet from the property line, signed by Werner Garrett's and Greg Sia Geisink. And then this one is dated September 10th of 2024, to whom it may concern. In regards to the feedlot variance being applied for by Jamie and Kimberly Garrett's, we have no objections. We fully support their intentions for a feedlot. We are neighbors to the east of them, Kurt and Janice Hummerding, and both signed by Kurt and Janice themselves as well. So, and then we'll mark these as a received date of the 9/12/2024.
All right, thank you.
And that's all I have.
All right, we'd proceed with looking for a motion.
Madam Chair, Jason Meterman, so moved to close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Amy?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
And I'm yes. So the public hearing is now closed. Is there any other further discussion before we go on to the findings? I'm looking for finding sheet. There we are. Okay, the proposed use is allowed in the zoning district in which the subject property is located, yes or no?
Madam Chair, yes, it is allowed in Ag 40.
The variance will be in harmony with the general purposes intent of the official controls.
Wait, I want to vote on that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Trying to just move ahead too quickly. All right, any other discussion on that one? That one's always just kind of a quick one anyway. All right, there's my list of who's here. Rob?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So number 2, the variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls or any related ordinances, yes or no?
Madam Chair, I'm going to say no, it doesn't meet the setbacks.
All right, we have one no. Is there any other comments?
Madam Chair, Jason Meterman, I do believe it's in, well, it doesn't meet the setbacks. It is in harmony with the general purposes of the ordinance. We have evidence from the adjacent landowner that they're supportive of this. So we're minimizing conflict, and we're also sticking with the county comprehensive plan goals that will be addressed in the next item. So I'm a yes.
Okay, Rob,
No.
Amy?
Yes.
And I'm going to be a yes for the reason that because directly behind that is agricultural land, and to put 50 feet or to put an extended amount of feet, that land behind the building ends up being kind of wasted land.
I'd like to add to that. So potentially down the road, he does hopefully plan on purchasing that acreage,
Yes.
which it would then meet the setback, so.
Correct. All right, so we have 2 noes and 3 yeses, which makes number 2 a yes. Number 3, the variance will be consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Madam Chair, Jason Wienerman, I believe it is with agricultural goal, ag use policy number 2, which is emphasize the importance of animal ag to county economy by treating it as a priority land use. And also the one on feedlots. Oh, allow animal feedlots in the ag areas by protecting them from non-farm housing through county zoning. Under ag animal policies, number 1.
Okay? Okay, George?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Jill?
Gone.
Oh, excuse me, I'm on the wrong one. Amy?
Yes.
And Rob?
Yes.
Okay. The number 4, the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner, yes or no? And I'm going to say yes, it is a reasonable manner. It's a building for livestock on a farm site. Okay, George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And Rob?
Yes.
All right, number 5, the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property and not created by the landowner.
Madam Chair, I'm going to say yes for what was discussed during the meeting today. There was the question about rotating it to attempt to meet the setback requirements. However, there is a fair bit of a slope running east and west across this site. So that is a property characteristic not created by the landowner, and if they do orient it east and west, there will need to be more earthwork performed that is probably going to be more environmentally damaging.
Okay, thank you. George?
No.
I'm a yes. Amy?
Yes.
And Rob?
No.
All right, we have 3 yeses and 2 noes, or a yes for that one. Number 6, the variance, if granted, maintains the essential character of the locality.
Madam Chair, I'm going to say yes. There are other feedlots in this area, plus they do have support from surrounding neighbors.
Okay, George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. And Rob?
Yes.
Number 7, the need for the variance involves more than economic considerations, yes or no?
Madam Chair, I'm going to say yes. Economics were not discussed.
Okay, George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. And Rob?
Yes.
All right, having all the answers answered in a positive motion, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the variance.
All right, we have a motion from Amy. Is there a second?
Madam Chair, Jason Wienerman, second.
Okay, George?
No.
I'm a yes. Rob?
No.
Okay, we have 2 noes and 3 yeses. Motion would carry, and if you have additional questions, you can ask that of staff during regular business hours. Thank you. Agenda item number 2 is an after-the-fact request from Jennifer and Bill Buckentine, Rebecca Linz of Waite Park, Minnesota, from Section 9.9.9A3 and 10.2.11A2 of the Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439, to leave as constructed a 28 by 40, which would be 1,120 square feet, two-stall attached garage less than 50 feet from the right-of-way of County Road 50, classified as a major collector, and less than 50 feet from the ordinary high water level, ahead of the established building line and partly in the shore impact zone of Big Fish Lake, classified as a recreational development. Also, to replace an existing 12 by 16, which is 192 square feet, deck less than 50 feet from the ordinary high water level, ahead of the established building line and partly in the shore impact zone of Big Fish Lake, classified recreational development. The said ordinance requires structural additions and decks to be located a minimum of 50 feet from the OHWL of a lake classified as recreational development, landward of the established building line, and a minimum of 50 feet from the right-of-way of a road classified as a major collector. The affected property is part of government lots 4 and 5, commencing at the southwest corner of Section 33, thence north on the west line of the said section, and a Lot 5, a distance of 1,607.65 feet of Section 33, Track 124 North, Range 30 West of Collegeville Township. And the property address is 26487 County Road 50, Cold Spring, Minnesota. And the applicants, if you could give your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Linz. My home address is 5942 Alvarado Court North in Plymouth, Minnesota.
And Jennifer Buckentine at 2122 County Road 137 in Waite Park.
Okay, thank you. Site visits, Rob, were you able to be there?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And I visited the site. Jason?
Yes.
And George?
No.
All right, staff report, please.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the applicants own a meets and bounds tract that contains 22,099 square feet in lot area on Big Fish Lake in Collegeville Township. The property is in an R1 zoning district. The applicants purchased the property in November of 2022. There's an existing 1,325 square foot residential dwelling that was constructed in 1952 prior to the official controls per the Stearns County Assessor's records. In 1976, a 1,120 square foot two-stall garage addition was constructed on the property without a permit. In 1986, a 312 square foot home addition and an 8 by 20 160 square foot deck were permitted and constructed. The deck was constructed larger than proposed on the permit. In 1991, a 504 square foot third stall garage addition was permitted and constructed. And in 1998, a 105 square foot gazebo was permitted and constructed. The existing subsurface sewage treatment system that services the dwelling was permitted and constructed in 1991. The system is certified compliant. The applicants are requesting an after-the-fact variance to leave as constructed the 1,120 square foot two-stall garage addition that was constructed in 1976. Also to replace the existing 12 by 16 192 square foot deck that was constructed larger than the originally permitted in 1986. The property is in the Shoreland Overlay District of Big Fish Lake, which is classified recreational development. Big Fish is on the list of impaired waters for mercury and fish. The current impervious lot coverage for the property is 26.2%. The applicants are proposing to remove impervious and implement an engineered permeable paver plan that will result in an impervious lot coverage calculation of 24.5%. An alternative to this request would be to replace the existing deck with an 8 by 20 160 square foot deck that was permitted in 1986. Collegeville Township Big Fish Lake Association, Sauk River Watershed District, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and property owners within 500 feet have been notified of this request, and we have not received any correspondence with regards to this request. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Applicants, if you have some comments, please.
Sure. Thank you for your consideration of our variance request. As mentioned, we're looking to replace our existing deck or a portion of it because it actually is rotting right now. So it's actually a safety hazard currently. And the reason that we're requesting to replace to the existing size is that if we replaced it only to what's currently permitted, it wouldn't actually go to the end of the patio door. So it would actually be like short of where the patio door opens. And as mentioned, we are bringing our overall lot coverage for impervious into compliance. So we're working to improve the situation that we inherited when we purchased.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. All right. Just questions or discussion from the board?
I have a question for applicants. Just out of curiosity, when you purchased the property, did you know all of this beforehand? Or has this been a learning?
Yeah. Madam Chair, members of the board, we did know that the deck was permitted smaller than what was built. We did know that. We weren't aware of the garage issue not being permitted.
Madam Chair, question for staff. I realize you probably weren't around in 1991. So when they permitted the third stall garage and constructed as built in 1991, did we just miss the deck size, or was that something that wasn't done by staff back then? They just looked at what was there, or what happened? Do we know?
So, Madam Chair, members of the board, at that time, we weren't looking at the entire property and permitting like we do today.
Okay.
The goal now is to kind of clean up these types of issues. That's why you're seeing a lot more of these after the fact requests to clean up stuff that wasn't permitted or, just was done without permits back in the day. So, yeah, we didn't look at it that way at that time. But you're right, I was not there.
For the deck replacement, is there any, so they've got the door there, and as they've indicated, if they replace the deck to the original, it's going to be too short for the door. Is there any thing about that? Is it sort of like if we follow what was designed, is sort of like tough luck, that's what it is, or?
Madam Chair, members of the board, there would probably be an option for like a 4-foot walkway like they have on the other side there as a possibility.
Okay.
I don't know how that configuration would all work out for them, if that would be what they're looking for or not, but
Thank you.
they do always have a 4-foot walkway for ingress and egress.
All right, thank you very much.
Question for applicants. Just out of curiosity, what are you replacing the deck with? What are you doing something more?
Our plan is to do a maintenance-free type of product instead of wood. Yeah.
So one more question for the staff. So when we're talking about the deck, what dimensions are we looking at? Are we looking at the square footage, or are we looking at the
Madam Chair, members of the board, I can answer that. So what was permitted is basically what they would be allowed to have. Unfortunately, we don't look at the square footage and say you can choose 40 by 30 or that. It would be limited to whatever they originally were permitted for, which would be the 8 by the 20.
Great, thank you.
8 by 20, 160. So we're talking like 32 feet difference in what they were permitted and what they have now? If I'm figuring it right by
Yes.
Okay,
32 feet, 32
32 square feet.
Yep.
Okay.
I have a question for both. If was ever running the pictures, that they could go back to the actual picture of the deck. Now, in your application, you said you're going to remove the lower deck. What does that involve?
Yeah, that's correct. So that lower deck was never permitted, and that'll go away and be replaced with grass seed. And the stairs to the right will go away. We're not exactly sure who dreamt up this configuration of stairs, but these stairs will go away, and that'll actually we'll just have our new patio down here, our pervious paver patio. And then, so this deck we're hoping to replace to that size, and then the stairs would actually go straight towards the gazebo and then down to the patio. And then this lower deck would be gone, it would be grass.
Okay. Any additional questions from the board? If not, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this request? Anyone in the audience? Okay, anyone at all? Hearing none, we're ready to close the public hearing.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to close.
All right, we have a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Madam Chair, Jason Reederman, second.
Okay. George?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So public hearing is now closed. We have a choice of doing either the two items together or separately. What are the wishes of the board?
I think we should do them together.
Any objections then to doing them together as one finding?
I would concur.
All right, then that's the route we will take. So the variance request is to leave as constructed the 28 by 42 stall attached garage, and also to replace what is existing of the 12 by 16 upper deck. All right, is the proposed use allowed in the zoning district in which the subject property is located? Yes or no?
Madam Chair, yes, sheds and decks are allowed.
All right, other discussion? George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. And Rob?
Yes.
Number 2 is the variance in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls.
Madam Chair, I'm going to say yes. The deck has been there a long time, and they're proposing actually to eliminate part of it and just redo it.
All right, Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Amy?
Yes.
And Rob?
Yes.
All right. Number 3 is the variance request consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Madam Chair, I'm going to say yes under living goal number 3. Support housing options that give people in all stages of life and economic means viable choices for safe, stable, and affordable homes.
All right, George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. And Rob?
Yes.
All right, number 4 is the property owner proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by any official controls.
Madam Chair, yes, it's reasonable to want a shed and a deck, and obviously this was done prior to, so they're just basically trying to clean it up.
Okay. So Amy is a yes. George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Rob?
Yes, I'm going to say, plus the fact that they're reducing the impervious cover.
Right. Number 5 is the plight of the landowner due to the circumstances unique to the property not created by the landowner.
Madam Chair, I'm going to say yes. This was created by the previous owners, and they inherited it or bought it this way, and they are just making it right.
Okay. George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. And Rob?
Yes.
Okay, number 6, will the variance maintain the essential character of the locality?
Madam Chair, it's not going to change anything.
Okay.
In fact, it'll be an improvement, so I'm a yes,
yes.
also.
Okay, so yes. George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
And I am a yes. Okay, and the need for the variance involves more than economic considerations.
Madam Chair, I'm going to say yes. Economics were not discussed.
Okay, George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Rob?
Yes.
Okay. So with all questions being answered in the positive, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Madam Chair, before we move, I have a question for staff regarding alternative number 4. That's the one: impervious surface must be brought to 25% or less prior to site permit issuance. Can we have that 25% or less impervious surface part of the site permit? So I'm okay if we grant the site permit, the construction permit, but I'd like to have that 25% included as a condition at such time after the construction is completed.
Madam Chair, members of the board, that could be an option. Where that gets to be an issue is if they decide they're not going to do it, we're chasing them then.
Okay.
So we prefer to have it done prior to. That way, everything is ready to go before we issue our permit.
Okay.
Okay, so are we ready for a motion then?
Madam Chair, I will make a motion to approve the after-the-fact request for the 2 items on the agenda with the impervious surface must be brought to 25% or less prior to construction permit issuance as a condition.
All right, we have a motion from Jason.
Madam Chair, I will second that motion. I do agree with him.
Okay. All right, George?
Yes.
And I am yes. And Rob?
Yes.
All right, so the motion passes. So if you have any questions about your variance request, you can ask them of staff during business hours. Thank you.
Good luck, ladies.
Okay, item number 3 is also an after-the-fact request from Terry and Elizabeth Brunkow of Blaine, Minnesota, from sections 10.2.11A2 of the Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439 to leave as constructed a 144 square foot deck, the upper deck, and a 496 square foot deck, the lower deck, that are ahead of the established building line. The said ordinance requires the decks to be constructed landward of the established building line. The affected property is part of Lot 5, part of Lot 6, and part of Lot 7, Block 1 of Flyway Beach, Section 35, Track 123 North, Range 31 West of Munson Township. And the property address is 21146 Elmway Road, Richmond, Minnesota. And is the applicant with us, I believe, virtually?
Yes, on the phone.
All right, we can hear
Yes,
you.
I'm here.
All right, sounds good. And in our technology, is the recording device picking up the remote person? Yep, okay, sounds good. All right, if you could say your name and address for the record, please.
Terry Brunko, 12825 Van Buren Street, Blaine, Minnesota.
Thank you. And if we could now have a staff report.
Hey, Terry. You're going to have to speak
Yes.
louder, please. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Madam Chair, members of the board, can I get a roll call of who had a chance to visit the
Yes.
site, please?
Rob?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
I visited the site. Jason?
I did as well.
And George?
No.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. The applicants own parts of lots 5 and 7 and all of lot 6, block 1 of Flyaway Beach on Horseshoe Lake in Munson Township. Flyaway Beach was platted in 1963 prior to the official controls. The tract contains 20,268 square feet in lot area per the survey provided with the application. The property is in the R1 zoning district. The applicants purchased the property in 2013. There is an existing 792 square foot residential dwelling that was permitted and constructed in 1979. In 1989, a previous owner applied for and was granted a permit to construct a deck on the east side of the dwelling. On that application, an existing deck is noted on the site plan. That existing deck is the 144 square foot deck, the upper one, that is part of this request. The 496 square foot deck, the lower one, also part of this request, and shed near the lake are first visible on the 2015 aerial photography. The applicants applied for a construction site permit to construct a shed on the property. The permit for the shed cannot be addressed until the 144 square foot deck upper and the 496 square foot deck lower that are ahead of the building line have been addressed. The property is in the Shoreland Overlay District of Horseshoe Lake classified recreational development. Horseshoe is on the list of impaired waters for nutrients and mercury in fish. The subsurface sewage treatment system on the property was permitted and installed in 2010. The system was certified compliant in June of 2024. The current impervious lot coverage for the property is 14.1%. The proposed impervious lot coverage with the currently proposed shed will be 17.2%. An alternative to the request would be to have a 4-foot wide walkway for ingress and egress. Munson Township, Sauk River Chain of Lakes Association, Sauk River Watershed District, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and property owners within 500 feet have been notified of this request. And we did receive one correspondence with regards to this request. It says, I have received notice in the mail that my direct neighbor on the lake is required to get an after-the-fact exception on the upper and lower deck for this property. I would like to have this statement read at the meeting on Thursday, September 12th, 2024. The only property that it would potentially impair the line of sight to the lake would be my property at 21158 Elmway Road. It does not. I know way, let me read this back, I'm sorry. In no way does the deck block our view, and it has never been an issue. As the closest neighbor to this property, I would strongly suggest allowing the decks remain as is, and I approve of the after-the-fact request. I am also in full support of the request to build a garage on the parcel as well. Thank you, Jacob Mueller, and the address on this email is 67 10th Avenue South, Waite Park. Now that might be his business address, but that's all I have with the request. And that was the only request that I received.
All right, thank you.
For correspondence, excuse me.
Okay. All right, if we have comments from the applicant then.
Yeah, the only comment I have is the deck, the upper deck, from my understanding, was built at the same time the house was built. And then the side deck was permitted after whenever, but that upper deck was already there when that side deck was put on. And as far as the lower deck, I have no idea when that was put on. All these were put in or were shown on the permit for the septic system, which was done in 2010, as under my understanding. And that's really the only documentation I have. Other than that, I inherited it all, and I'm just trying to clean it up so I can build a garage for a car. So, I'm not trying to add more, just trying to clean it up.
Okay, thank you. All right, any discussion from the board or questions?
I have a question for applicant. Terry, what are your plans for replacing this? What's your vision here? What do you want to use? What do you want to do?
For replacing the deck,
Yep.
well, when needed, I don't really have any plans to replace anything. If anything, I would eventually maybe put on some maintenance-free decking on top, but that's it.
Madam Chair, question for staff. So going to the 1989 permit that was granted. So in that permit, the deck on the left of the house is what was, in this picture, is what was permitted.
Correct.
And then the one that's sticking out to us
Mm-hmm.
sort of showed up.
So what, Angie,
So
can you go to the,
Well, so the deck on the left, so we have the house, and the 89, the upper deck, the east upper deck was permitted, right?
this one, yes, over here.
Okay.
And I'll kind of explain, Angie, can you put the building line picture on there for me? No, there should be an actual overhead view. There you go, right there, and then you can just spin that if you would. So,
I can see it, yeah.
right there, yeah. Well, I'll just explain it while we're here. Yep, you can keep going one more, I think. There we go. Okay, so there are a couple of ways that we establish a building line, okay? If the proposal is on the side of a property, the building line can go from here to here, and that was permitted that this was behind that building line.
Okay.
Now, when you're proposing something on the lake side of the cabin, we can't just use a side because there's two properties that are affected, and so that is drawn like that. And so these two decks fall ahead of that line, thus the reason they're here in front of you today. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so then the upper deck was constructed sometime in that 1989.
Correct. Sometime before that, because it was actually on the permit for this deck, it was shown on their drawing that they submitted to the county for that permit for this deck. So it was constructed sometime before 89 because it was already there according to their site plan that they showed.
Okay.
Would you say it's fair to say it was constructed when the house was built?
I can't speculate. I don't know.
Excuse me, can I intercede on this? The lower deck is not actually the full-size square footage you are reading, because part of that lower deck is concrete with pavers on it, which matches the same shape as the upper deck above it, which, from what I'm told and understand, follows the lake shore property line at that time. Hence the reason it is the way it is. This is what I'm told. And then also the house to the left on the picture you're looking, where it could interfere with the sight line, that house was actually moved closer to the property that I own now and up towards the road more. So the lot line, or the sight line, has actually changed from when everything was originally built.
Madam Chair, members
you
of the board,
understand what I'm saying.
I'll just point out that the correspondence that you heard me read came from this property owner.
Okay.
Just for your guys' knowledge, so you have an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Because he didn't give, he gave the address, but he didn't specify which one.
And then a question for the So you've got the 496 deck appeared in the first in the 2015 aerial photography. What was the year before that that you had imagery?
I believe before that we had 2010, but that did not have the resolution as these newer photos did.
Yep.
And so there are a lot of trees on this property. If you were there, you probably saw that there are trees very close to the deck.
Mhm.
And depending how that plane flies over, those trees can wreak havoc on what we see on the ground.
Yep.
And so it just makes it very hard. By no means am I saying it wasn't there. I just can't verify it on the aerial photos that we have being there earlier than that.
So the deck could have been around before 2000.
It certainly could have been.
Okay, thank you.
I'll follow up on that question. The assessor's office goes around 2 years or 3 years.
My understanding is 2 years. Angie, do you know if it's less than or more than that, or?
Madam Chair, Angie Berg, Environmental Services. So it's every 3. It's quintile.
And the deck showed up in 15?
So our assessor's records say 2017.
17.
But I'll give you more information on that as well. So if things are improved on the property, so say they redid this deck in 2007 and 17, the assessors tend to put everything as 2017. So they changed the year it was done. And as you can see, this is it's newer up here, and that's newer down there than than this is. So that's the best we have, unfortunately.
Okay. So I guess a question for the applicant. So on the lower deck, was that on the house when you bought it?
Yes, it was.
All right, thank you.
And like I tried saying, I have documentation from when the septic was done that deck was also there at that same time in 2010.
Do you have that on the assessment?
Okay,
On the septic permit.
all right. Additional questions from the board? I believe staff was checking on something for us, but we'll go ahead and open it up to the audience. If there is anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this application. Anyone at all? And the third and final time, anyone in the audience? All right. Any additional questions from the board? We'll wait just a moment as staff is looking for some clarification for us.
So Madam Chair, members of the board, we do have a 2010 septic permit. And on there, it does show a squared off deck. And so I would assume, they don't have it broken up as 2 different decks, but just shows deck on there. So, and
Okay,
it's
so it does-
squared off, it's not angled like the upper deck is. So he could be giving you information that we
It is
had.
absolutely correct.
Correct.
Okay. Yep. Okay. And that's good that we can verify that for the record, that we have correct information. So since we didn't have any input from the audience, I'm looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
Madam Chair, I move to close the public hearing.
All right, we have a motion from George. Jason? Or,
Yes.
excuse me, we need a second.
I'll second then.
Okay, I'm in favor. Amy?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. The public hearing is now closed. Now, we have a choice when we go ahead to do findings of fact. We can do the upper and lower decks separately, or we can do them as one. What would be the board's preference?
Madam Chair, I would like to see them separate.
I'd like to see them as one.
All right, we have one person separate, one person as one.
As one.
And Jason, what's your thought?
I'm indifferent, so.
Indifferent. I'd like to see us do it as one, so we have 3 as one indifferent, and 1 would like to do a separate. So I guess we'll do them as one. So our motion is to leave as constructed the 144 square foot upper deck and the 496 square foot lower deck. Number 1, is the proposed use allowed in the zoning district in which the subject property is located? Yes or no?
Madam Chair, yes, decks are allowed in R1.
All right, other comments? George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Rob?
Yes.
All right, number 2, is the variance in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls?
Madam Chair, I'm going to say yes. It was built by the previous owner, and with the official controls, they were completely different then.
Okay. All right, George?
Yes.
Jason?
Madam Chair, yes, and also we have the comment from the adjacent landowner who is not in opposition to this, so official controls are also designed to minimize conflicts between landowners.
All right, and I'll be a yes. Rob?
Yes.
Number 3, is the variance request consistent with a comprehensive plan?
Madam Chair, Jason Wienerman, I'm going to say yes under living goals, and I'm going to mix it up and go under Lakeshore Living Policies number 8, which is evaluate lakeshore housing projects for the following guidelines. Well, number 1 is preserve sight lines and does not negatively impact view sheds of the adjacent properties. The adjacent neighbor indicated they don't have a concern over this. And the second one is the project maintains the neighborhood's residential character by promoting compatible land uses. So we're not actually changing the land use, we're just bringing into compliance what is already there.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd like to add to Jason's under living goal number 3 that support the housing options.
All right. So we have 2 yeses so far. George?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. And Rob?
No. Under Lakeshore Living Policies 1, 2, and 3. I know it's hard to go backwards and correct illegal acts, but this is an opportunity to do that.
I'm going to challenge you on that one. Why do you feel that way? Because we don't know what they were then.
2015 was the earliest that showed up, the deck.
2010 also.
2010, the upper deck, squared, right.
Those sight lines could have changed.
The houses haven't moved.
Yes, the neighbors, they said the
sightline-
The neighbor's house moved.
When did the neighbor's house move?
Madam Chair, members of the board, I believe the applicant had given you information on that. I don't know that we have that documentation.
Maybe Terry can confirm that.
I don't have the exact date on when the house was moved. I was just told it was. I have a treasure trove of information from the previous owner, and I just couldn't find anything at the time. But that's all I know, that it had moved. The house had slid off its foundation towards the lake, so they had to move it closer to what is now my property and up the hill more. That's all I know. And I'm sure you could probably find in the records as far as when that was permitted to move that house or redo it, what was done.
Okay, so is that an issue for board members that we should have the staff continue looking for that, or?
No.
Madam Chair, I found it. It's 1986.
All right, thank you.
What was the difference?
I don't know, other than it just says moving existing cabin back 15 feet and over 50 feet on same lot.
That really could have significantly changed the
Absolutely.
building line by moving it 50 feet.
So they
50 feet or 15.
they
One was
moved it so it's exactly 30 feet from the right of way. But it's been like that since the decks were built, correct? Yeah, so I think
Okay.
it's,
Yes.
All right.
so the building line didn't change.
All right. Thank you. So for number
That's okay.
3, we have 4 yeses and 1 no. For number 4, is the property owner proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by official controls?
Madam Chair, I'm going to say yes, using decks as a reasonable use.
Okay. Jason?
Yes.
I'll be a yes. Amy?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Number 5, is the plight of the landowner due to circumstances unique to the property not created by the landowner? Well, I would say that since we can't really prove exactly when that lower deck was built on there, we can't determine whether it was or wasn't created by the current landowner.
Madam Chair, I'm going to agree with you on I'm going to say yes on that. The landowner testified that the deck was there when he bought the house, and we have nothing to contradict that. So unless there's alternative evidence, we have the landowner's testimony.
And we also have the septic system that shows a deck there when the septic was permitted. So right now we have 2 yeses. George?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes, and I'd like to add on to that. You know, you guys, he's trying to clean this up by doing it after the fact to make it right. So,
Okay.
I'm a yes.
Okay, and Rob?
Yes.
Number 6, will the variance maintain the essential character of the locality?
Madam Chair, it's not going to change anything, so yes.
Okay, George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Amy?
Yes, and I'd like to add he has full support of his neighbor.
And the need for the variance involves more than economic considerations.
Madam Chair, yes, economics didn't play a role here.
Okay, Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Amy?
Yes.
And Rob?
Yes.
All right. I'm having all of them in the majority of positive statements. We would look for a motion to approve.
Madam Chair, I'll approve the variance request.
You'll make motion to
I'll
approve?
make the motion to approve.
All right, do we have a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second.
Okay, Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Rob?
No.
Okay. So we have 4 yeses and, yes, 4 yeses and 1 no. Motion carries. So if you have any questions about your request, you can check with staff during regular business hours. Thank you. Our next
you.
item on the agenda is a request from Alex Evavold on behalf of KPH Enterprises LLC, Clearwater, Minnesota, from sections 10.2.11A1A of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439 to construct a 2,059 square foot residential dwelling with attached garage less than 100 feet from the OHWL of Two Rivers Lake, which is classified a recreational development. The said ordinance requires a structure setback of 100 feet from the OHWL of a lake classified recreational. The affected property is Lot 8, Block 1 of Blonigan's Addition, Plot 2 to Holding Township. The Section 32, Track 126 North, Range 30 West of Holding Township, and the property address is 19482 Two Rivers Road, Avon, Minnesota. And welcome applicants, and if you could give us your name and address for the record, please.
Elgit, 2277 197th Street East, Clearwater, Minnesota.
Okay.
Rhonda Skirmer, 1223 Basswood Road, South Haven.
Bernie Miller, 9075 155th Street, Kimball.
Okay, and Bernie, did you want to grab another chair, or are you fine at the
I'm fine
podium?
here.
All right, thank you. All right, if we then could go to who was able to visit the site. Rob?
Not this time.
Okay. Amy?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
And I visited. And George?
No.
Okay, thank you. Staff report, please.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. The applicants own Lot 8, Block 1 of Blonigan's Addition Plat 2 on Two Rivers Lake in Holding Township. Blonigan's Addition Plat 2 was platted in 1970 prior to the official controls. The tract contains 19,622 square feet in lot area per the survey provided with the application. The property is in the R1 zoning district. The applicants purchased the property in 2022. There is an existing 1,209 square foot dwelling that was permitted and constructed in 1973. There is also a 704 square foot detached garage that was permitted and constructed in 1979. The applicants are proposing to remove all of the existing structures on the property. In July of 2024, the applicants applied for a variance to construct a residential dwelling. The request consisted of multiple items needing setback variances. The request was denied by this board. The applicants are proposing now to construct a 2,059 square foot residential dwelling with attached garage 63 feet from the ordinary high water level of Two Rivers Lake. The property is in the shoreland and floodplain overlay district of Two Rivers Lake classified recreational development. Two Rivers is on the list of impaired waters for mercury and fish. The subsurface sewage treatment system on the property was permitted and installed in 2012. The system was certified compliant on April of 22. The applicants have provided a septic design for a new tank and drain field system to serve the proposed home. The current impervious lot coverage for the property is 16.1%. The proposed impervious lot coverage will be 17%. The proposed request represents a 37% deviation from the required ordinary high water level setback. Holding Township, Friends of Two Rivers Lake Association, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and property owners within 500 feet have been notified of this request. We did receive a couple of correspondence with regards to this request very recently, as yesterday afternoon actually. Good afternoon, Jamie Lucas. It is difficult to build on a non-conforming lot in a floodplain area. The dwelling is 52 feet wide and the RFPE is 1138. The RFPE needs to extend out from the dwelling at 1138 for 15 feet on 3 sides of the dwelling. The survey indicates that the dwelling is 16 feet from the property line at 1138. The grade will have a sharp drop off at the east property. The drop off being located along the swale between the properties will see erosion problems. Along this area, KPH will need to remove 5 mature pine trees to construct the dwelling. KPH Enterprise could move the dwelling 8 feet to the west, and the proposed dwelling would be centered in the middle of the property, allowing the RFPE at 15 feet with a grade of 9 feet to the neighboring properties. The septic system mound is 42 feet by 70 feet, and I would like an explanation at peak elevation of 1139. Explain how the septic system will fit in the small space that is left on the property. Holding tanks will work in this confined space. According to drawings, footnotes, the well to the west of the property will be capped. Who is responsible for the new well? To install the septic, KPH Enterprise will be removing 6 mature deciduous trees and 5 coniferous trees to the east to construct the dwelling. Also, KPH may need to remove a couple of trees towards the lake based on elevation of the property towards the lake. This would be the result of girdling the tree. What is the recommendation that the Board of Variance will require KPH to do for the lake? Will the board require a native buffer along the lake shore? The blueprints do not indicate that the dwelling has gutters. Gutters should be installed and the stormwater should run toward the road, not the lake. Retaining wall should not be used. It will create a dam issue along the property line. Also, the possibility of a wall holding water on the road during flooding. It will not be in harmony with the area. The property should be graded to allow for even drainage. Sincerely, James B. Smith. And I don't have an ad. Oh, I do have it here. 7525 Don Avenue, Inver Grove Heights, Minnesota 55076. And the second one is, in looking at the proposed property improvements, Friends of Two Rivers Lake Association has no objection to the adjustment as proposed. Regarding the 100-foot setback from the ordinary high water level, we have an active project to have the ordinary high water level moved closer to the lake, nearer to 1132, which is easily met by the proposal. The topographical map below shows the 1132 elevation more closely, reflects the state's definition of the ordinary high water level that does anything higher than 1133. Additionally, any concerns about flooding in the particular area do not come from the lake, but south to river. The river floods all septics and drain fields before the lake gets high enough to reach the structures. This can also be seen on topographical maps of the area. If the river exceeds 1134, the area is flooded from the south and west, while the lake has yet to reach its structures at 1134. Having lived through several of those events myself, it is quite striking how much water flows through our properties from the river. Please let me know if you have any questions. Regards, Dan Brady, Board Chair, Friends of Two Rivers Lake Association. And that is all that we have. He does, right here. That capability. Oh. It's kind of hard to see because it's.
Okay. Anything else from staff?
That is the last correspondence that I
Okay.
have. So thank
All right.
you, Madam Chair, members of the board.
All right, thank you. So then, if the applicants would like to share with us their comments?
We're asking for one variance so we can build a home. I want to refer to with the trees being taken down. I'm unaware of all the trees. I think some of the pine trees that they're referring to are not even on our property. They are the neighbors' trees. So I'm not sure what he is referring to. I also want to say for what was the gentleman's name? Yeah. Mr. Smith was also granted a variance back in 2020 from the board to be closer to the water, just like we are, which I do have copies of if you are interested in those. So I really think that we have changed our plan a lot, and I really don't think we're going above and beyond in what we're asking for.
Okay, anyone else? Bernie or any of the others?
Yeah, Madam Chair and members of the board. I think you probably remember last time we were here, and so I'll highlight some of the things that we had done to make improvements based on some of the suggestions and concerns that you had. So, we looked at reducing the variances. Basically, we were, stuck with a choice of adding a bunch of variances similar to before that were related to the septic system or to the road setback or all that, and looking at where, where this, what would make the most sense, and talking with staff a little bit about how to do this. We redesigned a house that was narrower. If you look at what we changed from before, the previous request was the house and garage was 3,209 square feet. So now we're down to 2,059. So considerable amount of change. The total buildings is reduced 1,300 and is reduced from 3,448 to 2,093. So considerable reduction there. Reduce the entryway. And just a note that the existing house and garage is 1,927 square feet, and what they're proposing is 2,059. So I think the biggest change on this plan is that it has a second story, so they can have some additional square footage. And so we looked, and we looked around the neighborhood. As you go up and down, there is 2-story houses there. I don't know if it would be consensus that everyone has, but I would say that anybody that ever does anything in the future probably will likely have to do that, just because of the square footage and setbacks and the limitations of trying to spread out. So another note, there was some concern about the drainage on the Smith side, and before we had the wall to that property line, and some of the concern was that the water drains through there, and we would effectively block that. So we had pulled the wall back 10 feet from that line, a minimum of 10 feet, and it actually gets further away as it gets closer to the lake. So we've made it a lot more room for drainage on that side. The other side of the lot, that naturally drains there right now, and so right down the line. So if you were to actually put a wall on the line where it actually drains, it's not actually going to dam water or change that. It's just going to continue to drain down there. So it really doesn't affect it. So we looked fairly hard at the elevations, not only what they said about the river across the road, how that's going to work, how we could affect that, how we could still manage and meet the floodplain requirements 15 feet around the house and still get the septic. We modified the septic, turned that, eliminated all the variances for the septic system. And I think that a consideration that is possible if they want is they could have holding tanks. If for some reason you thought that would be better, but there is an option for a full system. The Smith suggested that holding tanks would maybe be a viable option, and I don't know how that 100% is going to be affected here, but either way, numerous improvements. I think that most of the things that you had suggested, or the board had suggested, we took back, worked through the design with them, the house design, and worked it from inside out and backwards, trying to figure out how to make something work and eliminate, because we were at 5 variances before, and now we're basically down to 1. And the lake variance had again, I said, that was previously at 50 feet, so that was a 50% deviation, and now we're at 63 feet. So we've made some major improvement on that as well.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board?
Madam Chair, question for the staff. On page 12 of 17, that has the proposed location of the house. Roughly, where's the existing house?
previous plan and our site plan has that, but that wasn't included, I noticed when I looked at the packet.
Yeah.
So, I have a drawing that would show you where that is, if you want me to bring it up and show you, otherwise I don't know if they actually have it.
No.
Or
Looks like staff has one.
the same thing.
So this is
So the proposed is in blue.
the proposal in blue, this is existing, and that's the.
Mhm.
Right.
And this, yeah, so
So blue is the proposed.
proposed,
and
which
the
includes the
shaded
garage
would be-
already,
The shaded would be the house
and the garage would be,
correct.
okay. So, all right.
Thanks.
And a question for staff, looking at that picture, it appears then that the proposed would not be any closer to the lake than the existing? Is that,
That is correct based on what we're seeing here, for sure.
okay, thank you. Other questions from the board?
So, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm still framing
Okay,
mine, so.
Staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but addressing the one letter that you had from Smith, new houses aren't allowed on holding tanks, correct?
Correct, so that would require a variance request
Right.
if that was the thought.
Question for staff, did, is it Nikki from the DNR, did she have any objections this time?
We had no correspondence from DNR on this request.
Okay.
So I think I have my question. So you've substantially reduced the square footage of the proposed house. So now you're 2,050, give or take. How is that split between the two floors? Is that the footprint of the house, or is that square footage of the both floors?
That is aerial footprint.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for clarification. The septic system you have designed, it'll work, right? With everything else?
Correct.
Okay.
And, you know, commenting to the Smiths' suggestion about holding tanks, at least from my experience, the county has always preferred standard septic tanks whenever possible, just because there can be so many problems with holding tanks as far as them overflowing or not being maintained properly. And frankly, there's a great deal more expense after the fact of installation with holding tanks.
Plus, you'd be surprised how fast they fill up. You'll be pumping them all the time.
Yep.
Can I say something?
Yes, go ahead.
We do have holding tanks now, and I had them pumped in the fall, and we never used it, and in the spring they're full.
Yep.
Madam Chair, question for staff. So when the first application came before us, there were 5 variance requests. Have the other 4 been cleaned up? So we're only looking at 1 because that's the only one we're looking at.
Madam Chair, members of the board, yes, it's just the one
Thank you.
setback to the lake that they would not be meeting at this point.
Okay, thank you.
And as we stated before, they are no closer than the current house, and they could technically rebuild on the same footprint of what's currently there. Is that correct?
Yeah, there is a state statute that would allow them to replace what is currently existing without expansion.
But basically, they're building up. It almost looked like it moved up ahead.
Well, according to the picture, though, it looked like it wasn't any closer than what the current.
They knocked off that one back. Can we see that map again?
Angie, do you have the doc in?
Yeah.
For the audience.
Right, that's what I mean, so they're no closer.
This is further back than the existing,
Right.
what she's saying.
Right, the majority of it is.
The majority of it, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay,
So
Any-
just for those in attendance, I believe we're going to try to get a document cam so you can all see what we're seeing.
okay, and while they're working on that, any other questions before we open it up to the audience? Okay, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this application? Okay, please come up to the podium and share your thoughts.
James B. Smith, 7525 Dawn Avenue East, Timber Grove Heights, Minnesota. I do have a question. On the footnotes in this drawing here, it states about capping of the well to the neighbor to the west. Okay, what is being done about that? Who is responsible for putting in a new well on that? And second of all, to the east, where you have, not on this, but on the survey, it indicates you have a 16-foot RFPE that's going to be out on there, and you're going to have a strict drop-off there. Okay, we had the same situation on our property, and we had to move in the structure 25 feet for the garage to create that grade down on our property. So why isn't that being recreated here when you're going to have this strict drop-off, almost a vertical drop-off on this? And the next question is in regards to buffers for the water. What are you going to do for the lake? Thank you.
Okay. All right, so he had 3 questions, basically. The applicant or staff, can you talk about that, the well, clapping that well, what that situation is?
Madam Chair, members of the board, I'll defer that to Mr. Miller here. It is number 1 on your notes here. The shallow well on the property to the west is to be abandoned, as well as the shallow well on the subject property. Is that?
And has there been conversation with the property owner to the west as far as that shallow well
Can I,
being capped?
can I answer something?
Yes.
I did do a lookup of the last thing that was on the neighbor's property back in 2017 when it was sold to the neighbor's property. The location of the well, it's a shallow well, is located, there's a picture of it here, is located up towards the cabin. So now where is it located?
So I can point out a few things if you don't mind, if you can slide this down so we
Yep.
can see that. So when we were out working on the septic design, we asked clarification where the well is. We had some indications that it was back here, so.
Yeah, right
we were told it was back there. I don't believe it was Mr. Smith else there said, no, that well quit working, so. So that well, and this is where his holding tank is. And so it's only a 50-foot setback. So it did meet the setback from his well to his tank before, but now if they really did move the well up there, it doesn't meet the setback of his well. Either way, You know, if we were maybe 70 feet from his well, you know, we could get a variance from the Department of Health.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, Bernie, but you gotta use the Jamie's pointer and be in the mic, otherwise I can't pick you up.
Okay.
Nope, you'd need to stand by the mic.
The mic.
And then use the pointer to,
Ah, okay. Now, where did the pointer go?
It might only work at this one because
Oh,
when it hits the TV, it doesn't. So you have to point
aim
at
it,
this one, Bernie.
yeah, to the other screen.
This one. There you go.
All right. So we were told that was where the well was originally, and it no longer work, so they moved it to here. Okay. When it was here, it was very close to the 50-foot setback required from their own holding tank, and now it's actually moved to a position. Now, we didn't go in the building. This is hearsay as to where this well is now, if it even is there. But if the well is there, then yes, that, you know, their tank is too close, either way. But so we would have if it is a shallow well, then and we have no documentation that it is a deep well, so it's generally assumed it's a shallow well. So then you would have a 100-foot setback from the well to the drain field. You know, a person can get a variance from the Department of Health to have a well closer. That's not always preferable. It is a possibility if it was 70 feet away. We've had that happen in numerous times. We've done that, but when we get closer, like to 60 feet, or I mean, in this case, we're probably 65 feet away from the well. That could be an option. And so, you know, we had discussed this. They were clients were aware that we would have to do something with that well, and there's a lot of things involved when it comes to this, where there's different hurdles you have to go through. And so, I don't know at what point or how far. Apparently, they had not talked to him or whatever about it. So, you know, if they can't come to a resolution on that, then, you know, what does that mean? I don't know.
Madam Chair, so the well question, as Bernie said, is really up to the Department of Health. If the variance is approved tonight, all you're approving is the home to the lake. If they can't make the septic system configuration work based on what the design shows that is the situation for the well, then they're going to have to come back to you.
Okay.
I don't see any way around that. I guess that's something for them to sort out.
Okay. And I'm just understanding that the neighboring landowner's septic is closer to that well than this septic will be. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct, but it's just a holding tank.
It's just, that they have is a holding tank. Okay.
Just a super quick question for the staff. So you showed us where the old house is and the new house is. Can you highlight for the audience members what we're talking about?
Sure. I can if you want me to, since I have the pointer. This gray hatching is the existing house. The gray hatching here is where the existing garage is. So the proposed house is not only further from the lake than the existing house, it's also further from the road, which before it was, do not believe, let me see if I can see. No, before it did meet the setbacks from the road, actually.
All right, thank you for the context.
Yep.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I can take the one question about the buffer
All right.
requirement. So in 2020, we, as you remember, that's back when we had Soil and Water looking at some of these and recommending mitigation. So there was mitigation for Mr. Smith's property required. The difference is that proposal was going to be in the shore impact zone, and whereas this one is not. And so that wouldn't, this application in front of you tonight wouldn't have went to our staff, who's Nick Newman reviewing these, because it's not the impact zone.
Okay.
And I forgot the third question, so.
And the third question was about the drop-off. And Mr. Miller, if you could maybe talk about that?
Sure. So, you know, the wall itself you know, we need to meet that, what is it, 1137.25, 15 feet around the house.
Madam Chair, members of the
For the
board, the
elevation?
RFPE is 1138.253, and 15 feet around the house must be at 1137.253 to meet floodplain elevations.
Okay, so they're raising it about 2 feet, roughly, or?
Yeah. Yeah.
Question here, and there is an active project right now
So I'll let you.
I can take that one. So the department asked the DNR a couple of years ago to review the ordinary high water level for Two Rivers Lake. They did. They resurveyed it, and the answer is they're not changing it. So what Mr. Brady's referring to the county's unaware of that conversation. I'm only aware of the conversation from the DNR from 2 years ago saying it's not going to change. I mean, even if there were discussions on changing it, it's not changed. And so changing an ordinary high water level almost never happens. It's never happened since I've been here, 25 years. So even if it were to happen, that wouldn't affect what you do here tonight. That would be a while in the future.
Okay, thank you.
May I add a
Yes.
little bit about the wall? Okay?
Yes,
so
go
it's
ahead.
like that wall is like 2 feet. So we could just eliminate that wall and taper that right over to the property line and have no significant drop off. However, when it floods, you know, there was discussion at the previous meeting that water needs to go through here. So if we fill that in, you know, instead of having that wall, we're basically just creating a channel right down that property line for that water to run. So this allows an opportunity, a wider area for that water to flow through there. And it doesn't necessarily have to be 1.5 feet tall. It could be, you know, they could put some fill on the, they could potentially put a little bit of fill on the bottom side of that wall and taper it out so it's only 1 foot. I mean, but basically it's about 2 feet.
And am I understanding that part of the purpose of that wall then would be to divert water away, that no additional drainage would happen to the neighboring property? Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
All right. All right. Other questions from the board? We had no, is there any additional questions from the audience? Anyone else wanting to speak? Anyone at all? Any others interested in speaking? Okay, hearing none, we're ready for a motion to close the public hearing.
Madam Chair, I'll move to close the public hearing.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm a yes. Amy?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
All right, the public hearing is now closed. And we will move on to findings of fact. The proposed use is allowed in the zoning district in which the subject property is located, yes or no?
Madam Chair, yes, homes are allowed in R1.
Okay, George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Rob?
Yes.
Number 2, the variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls and any related ordinances, yes or no?
Madam Chair, Jason Wienerman, with the redesign of the house, they are moving it back to almost the footprint of the original structure. So they will be in line with the general purposes of the official controls as per the original structure, which could be rebuilt on the site.
All right, we have a yes. Any other discussion here? Okay, George?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Amy?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
All right, number 3, the variance will be consistent with the comprehensive plan, yes or no?
Madam Chair, I'm going to say yes to this. And under Lakeshore Living Policies, number 1, limit the impact of additional shoreline development by clustering homes away from shorelines.
Okay, we have a yes for number 3. Any other discussion? Okay, George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Rob?
I would say yes, and under living goals number 3.
Okay. Number 4, the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner. Yes or no?
Madam Chair, I'd say yes. They've made significant changes, and I think it's a go for me. Yes.
Okay. Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Amy?
Yes.
And Rob?
Yes.
Okay. Number 5, the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner. I'm going to say yes to this one because I think the topography, the location of the river, the location of the lake, just adds a whole lot of difficulty into trying to replace a home on this property, and those are not created by the landowner.
Madam Chair, I'd concur with that, and considering what was brought before us in July, the applicants have significantly brought this back into the original footprint. So they've done a nice job to address the concerns we've had. So they are struggling mightily with the limitations of the site.
Okay, George?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And Rob?
Yes.
All right, number 6, the variance, if granted, maintains the essential character of the locality.
I'm going to say yes. I mean, the other homes in this area are pretty modest, just like this is going to be. It's not really going to change anything.
Okay, we have a yes. George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Rob?
Yes.
Okay. Number 7, the need for the variance involves more than economic considerations.
Madam Chair, I'll say yes, based on all the things we covered about the topography of the lot and what could be built there, and yeah, so I'd say yes.
Okay, Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Amy?
Yes.
And Rob?
Yes.
All right, we have all 6 questions in the yes format. So we're looking for a...
Madam Chair, I do want to put on record that the DNR did not have an issue with this plan like they did the first one as
time.
well.
We'll put that on record then. All right, so if anyone is ready to make a motion to approve.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion to approve and a second. Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Rob?
I'm going to be a yes and thank the applicants for the work they're doing up front rather than coming after you've done the work.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for doing your homework.
Yes. Yes, I think the after the facts are giving us headaches.
Yes.
All right, so thank you. So your motion has been approved. So if you have additional questions about your plan, you can ask that of staff during regular business hours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right. Okay. Item number 5 is to consider an administrative appeal submitted by Scott Cheetah Melrose, appealing the Environmental Services staff decision that a variance and a construction site permit are required to locate or construct a pergola on a property that is not meeting the setbacks to the Sauk River. The affected property is Lot 1, Block 1 of Riverside Addition, Section 28, Track 126 North, Range 33 West of Melrose Township, and the property address is 34934 County Road 65, Melrose, Minnesota. And is the applicant here? And if you could state your name and address for the record.
Okay, Scott Cheetah, 146 Meadow Lark Lane, Melrose, Minnesota.
Okay.
Lois Lashinsky, 146 Meadowlark Lane, Melrose, Minnesota.
Okay, thank you. And if we could have a roll call of those who were able to visit the site. George?
No.
Jason?
Yes.
And I visited the site. Amy?
Yes.
And Rob?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And staff report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. The applicants own Lot 1, Block 1 of Riverside Addition on the Sauk River in Melrose Township. Riverside Addition was platted in 1987. The tract contains approximately 130,855 square feet, or 3 acres. The property is in the R1 zoning district. The applicant purchased the property in 2015. There is an existing 1,040 square foot shed that was permitted and constructed in 2016. In January 2023, Environmental Services received a complaint regarding unpermitted structures on the property. Environmental Services staff determined that several unpermitted structures existed on the property. The structure related to this appeal is one of the structures from the complaint. It does not meet the setback to the Sauk River and would require a variance to remain in the current location. The other unpermitted structures on the property are able to be addressed by an application for a construction site permit. And the applicants have actually submitted an application for those structures. As stated, this is an appeal of an administrative decision, so this is not a variance request for that structure's setback to the lake. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here with that. Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance number 439 defines a structure two ways. One definition is any building or appurtenance, including decks, except aerial or underground utility lines, such as sewer, electric, telephone, telegraph, gas lines, towers, poles, and other supporting facilities and fences. The other definition pertains to Section 10.1, the floodplain overlay district, and that states anything constructed or erected on the ground or attached to the ground or on-site utilities, including but not limited to buildings, factories, sheds, detached garages, cabins, manufactured homes, recreational vehicles not meeting the exemption criteria. If the appeal is denied, the applicant will have the following options: remove the structure, move the structure to a location that meets all the required setbacks while also reducing the maximum accessory area to 1,800 square feet, and obtain a construction site permit. Or they have the option to apply for an after-the-fact variance to keep the structure in the current location and the total maximum accessory building area larger than allowed by the ordinance. The property is in the floodplain overlay district of the Sauk River, which is classified as agricultural along the stretch. The Sauk River is on the list of impaired waters for nutrients and mercury in fish. So there are findings of fact to go through, and there's going to be two options. Option one will be to uphold the appeal, in which case you're agreeing with the property owners that it should not be considered a structure, thus it should not have to meet setbacks and so forth. Or you have the option to deny, in which case you're saying it is a structure and it is required to meet the setbacks. Does that make sense? I just want to make sure, because we don't hear these appeals very often, and it is a little bit differently. It's done a little differently than your typical variance request.
Okay.
And I have not received any other correspondence with regards to this request.
All right. And let's see. Okay. All right. If then the applicants could share with us your thoughts on the appeal.
Okay, before I put that, it was a green gazebo. And when I called Stearns County, he said you can stay 50 feet away from the river. We don't need nothing, no permit or nothing to put it there. So then after 2 years, 2.5 years, then Stearns County gave me a letter that said it's too close to the river. It's too close to the river. Okay, so I was working with Brian, and Brian goes, well, if you take the ring around the bottom so the water can flow through, you can leave it. And then a little while later, I talked to him again, and he said, no, it's still a structure. because there's a roof on it. You take the roof off, then you can leave it. No, then he come along again and said, you gotta take everything down. You can leave the poles, but the rest gotta go. And there we are. I wonder if they wouldn't have told me to put, that I needed a permit, I wouldn't have put it there. So, I mean, I don't know what else to say.
A question for staff. Jamie, do you have any documentation of any conversations or any paperwork that he dealt with Brian?
I don't believe he originally dealt with Brian, was it?
Don Klemke.
Oh, and Don was way before this time.
He came into Melrose to the city center, and then we went up there and talked to him up at the Melrose City Center.
No, Don Klemke is retired probably
Yeah, he-
10-ish years ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have
So
did it.
how long has this structure been there then?
At least 3 years.
2.5, 3 years.
Okay, so Don's been retired here from 10 years?
But we were talking to him previously, before we ever even put the building up.
Yep.
Because we wanted to make sure everything was cut and dry, and it didn't turn out to be anyway.
So now I don't call it a structure, I call it a sculpture, so, I mean,
And so our task tonight is just to say, did staff follow the ordinance by requiring them to follow the ordinance? Does this fit the qualifications of a structure? Okay. So is there discussions from the board?
Well, based on what I'm reading, the definition of a structure is, in my opinion, it's a structure. It says anything constructed or erected on the ground or attached to the ground. So, to me, it's clear cut.
And I think, and my thought is, recently or over the last year, we had some, I can't remember what they're called, with the roofs that they just put the boards across. It's not a solid roof.
Pergola.
Okay, those are called pergolas. Okay, we've had several of those come before us, and we considered all of those structures. And it does have, I believe, a cemented out base. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. It is.
And again, to reiterate what we talked about, what you introduced, we are just saying, we are assessing whether the department followed appropriate policy and protocols for this.
That is
There-
correct, Madam Chair, members of the board.
We are making no judgment of how this board would act in the event of an after-the-fact permit or something like that.
That is correct.
Yep.
Right.
And Don never did any record keeping? I mean, it'd be nice to have something to
Well,
reference to.
Madam Chair, so, I mean, what happened with prior employees, even if it's someone that's not 10 years ago, I can't speak to that, and it was long before we had any system of tracking these
Or map from
conversations.
2010 to show where, I mean.
But this
What I-
structure's only been here a couple years, so they're going by information of somebody who was an employee 10 years ago.
And then who did you deal with this currently then? When you put it up, who did you talk to?
with, Don.
10 years ago.
That's when it was a gazebo, Benzebo. It was
It was all
screens on the
enclosed.
side and everything, and had a roof on it and everything. And then when someone, they turned us in, then I talked with Brian. And then Brian said if you take, because there was a ring around the bottom too. He said if you take that off so the water flows through, you're fine. But then he come back again, no, it's still a structure, you gotta take the roof off. And then I did that, I took the roof off and I put them hoops over the top because it can rain in, it ain't no roof on there no more.
So do you have pictures of this prior to this remodel? So there was an existing gazebo that was here and you basically replaced it.
Well,
So when-
no, I put that up. I put the gazebo up, the Benzebo up, because I asked Don first.
Okay,
Do I
but-
need something? A permit or, and he said no.
Yep. I think, though, we need to get back to our sole job tonight is to determine, is this a structure? Does this meet the standard of the county to need a construction permit and to meet setbacks?
But one question. Now, we were told if we take down the roof, those little strips, we can leave the poles and everything the way it is. We just got to take down that metal strip around and across, and we can leave the poles.
Just the poles, that's it.
So what's the difference with that little bit on the top? I mean, it's not hurting anything, and if we can leave the rest of it stand.
Well, I don't know that you could leave the rest of it stand because it's attached to the ground, and in the definition,
It's erected from the
it's
ground.
erected from the ground, so in the definition, it would be a structure. Even if the roof and none of the tin was there. Okay. And I think at this point, we'll open it to, let's see.
Do we do public comment?
Yep, according to this, we do public comment, right?
Madam Chair, you can. I'm not sure we even did a notice because it's an appeal, so
Okay.
typically we don't do a 500-foot notice.
I was
But if
just looking
someone
at-
is
okay.
here, they should be able to come up and
Comment,
talk.
yep. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this application? Anyone at all? And for the third time, anyone at all? All right, so we have no one in the audience wishing to speak to this application. Are we ready to close the public hearing?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay. We have a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a second from George. From Rob. George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Amy?
Yes.
All right, so we either need to,
Sorry, Madam
Yes.
Chair, for the interruption, but the findings of fact that you have in your packet are incorrect. And the findings of fact for this request are just 1 through 4, which is on the screen. And there
Okay.
doesn't have to be all in the affirmative. These are
Okay.
just opinions. So
Okay.
I'll try to zoom in on, I apologize for that.
okay, so we'll just go off of the screen, not off of my sheet.
Yep.
Okay, what is the intent of the land use and zoning ordinance as it relates to the appeal?
Madam Chair, Jason Reederman, so as we're looking at the assessment in a shoreland overlay district, which is identified as 10.2.1 purpose, it's to protect and enhance the quality of surface waters by promoting the wise utilization of public waters and related land resources. So this is tied to related land resources as explicitly defined in 10.2.1 of 439.
Okay. So do we need to just have discussion on this, or do we need to vote on each one? Just discussion, okay. Anyone else want to make comments on number 1? All right, if we move on to number 2, what is the intent of the comprehensive plan as it relates to the appeal?
Madam Chair, I'm going to say Lakeshore Living Policies. Number 1, limit the impacts of additional shoreland development.
And Madam Chair, in addition, staff can correct, this is the Sauk River, right? And that's a canoe route. It's a public canoe route. So the comprehensive plan does talk about recreation goals. I'm not sure which ones they are. So maintaining recreational characteristics is an important component of the plan as well.
Okay. All right, moving on to number 3. What county directives apply to the subject at hand?
So if I understand what the staff was and what was identified in the documentation, this was complaint driven. So staff received a complaint from somebody in the county somewhere saying there was a violation of shoreland ordinance with a structure. County went out, assessed the site to document where the structure was, identified it was within the shoreland zone, and I believe issued a notice of violation. So they followed county process for the findings and building the file on this project from what has been documented by staff in the report.
Okay. And number 4, has staff properly applied the provisions of the ordinance? I'll say the ordinance defines structures as anything that is attached to the ground as one component. It doesn't have to meet all of them, but could meet any of those requirements, and this is attached to the ground. It also has a cement pad, or a cement or tarred pad, I'm not sure which it was, which can affect water flow and impervious surface, and that's really the intent, I think, of the ordinance, is to control those things. And I think if we get too loose on what we define as a structure, you know, there's new things coming out every day. You know, that this type with the grain bins, this was a new thing that has, you know, 20 years ago you didn't see these, but you do now. So we never know what's coming down the road. So I think we need to make sure that our ordinances are flexible enough to include, you know, any of the new things that are coming out. Mm-hmm.
And to build on that, I mean, we're not saying this is an inappropriate use. If they come in and if you folks file an after the fact application for a permit, the board can then assess whether the permit would be an approved use. What we're doing now is we're just assessing was the county process followed in a non-arbitrary process. So
any additional discussion from the board? Are we ready to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll move to deny the appeal.
All right, we have a motion to deny. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion to deny and a second. Rob?
I agree.
Jason?
I concur with the denial.
And I agree. So the appeal has been denied, so you will need to meet with staff or talk with them in regular business hours, whether you plan on asking for an after the fact or what you plan on doing with the structure.
So question for staff outside of this, just a general question. I've never seen one of these. Is there a cost associated with filing an appeal?
For filing,
For filing the appeal, do the landowners, was there a cost associated with this? Okay, thank you.
same variance, same as the variance application fee.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Our next item on our agenda is number 6, is an after-the-fact variance from Section 10.2.11A1 of the Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance 439 to leave as constructed 168 square foot deck, 88 feet from the OHWL, and 463 square feet residential dwelling addition that is 89 feet from the OHWL of Big Birch Lake classified recreational development. The said ordinance requires a deck and dwelling additions to be 100 feet from the OHWL at a lake classified as recreational development. And if the applicant could introduce themselves and give us their address, please.
Sure. Mark and Tutzler. I'm at 18318 Justice Way, Lakeville, Minnesota.
Okay.
David Mortensen, Kretsch Law Office, 17850 Suite 219, Lakeville, Minnesota 55044. I'm the Hostlers Council.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Staff, if you could, first of all, how many were able to visit the site? Let me find my list here. George?
No.
Jason?
Yes.
And I visited the site as well. Amy?
Yes.
And Rob?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And staff, to your report.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. The applicant owns Lot 3, Block 1 of Birch Cove on Big Birch Lake in Millwood Township. Birch Cove was platted in 1982. The tract contains 60,087 square feet in lot area per the survey provided with the application. The property is in the R1 zoning district. The applicant purchased the property in 2021. There is an existing 1,026 square foot residential dwelling that was permitted and constructed in 1982. In 1997, a permit was issued to construct a 1,680 square foot addition on the existing residential dwelling. In 2006, a previous owner was granted a permit to construct a 13 by 33, 429 square foot residential dwelling addition. A 463 square foot addition was constructed that is 89 feet to the ordinary high water level. In May of 2024, Environmental Services staff received a complaint about structures being constructed on the property without a permit. Staff determined that 2 sheds and a deck had been constructed on the property without a permit. The 2 sheds were moved to a location that can be addressed by a construction site permit. The deck is not meeting the setback to the ordinary high water level and is part of this request. The applicant is requesting an after-the-fact variance to leave as constructed a 168 square foot deck constructed in 2023 and a 463 square foot dwelling addition that was constructed larger than permitted in 2006. The property is in the Shoreland Overlay District of Big Birch Lake classified recreational development. Big Birch is on the list of impaired waters for mercury and fish. The subsurface sewage treatment system on the property was permitted and installed in 1997. The system was certified compliant in April of 2021. The current and proposed impervious lot coverage for the property is 21.9%. An alternative to the request would be to replace the deck with a 4-foot wide walkway for ingress and egress from the dwelling. Millwood Township, Big Birch Lake Association, Sauk River Watershed District, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and property owners within 500 feet have been notified of this request. And we did have one correspondence that came in recently. Prior to building, one should obtain the prior permits. One should be held responsible to the requirements of the ordinary high water level and also property line setbacks. If you agree to allow the Hotzler family to build and ask for forgiveness later, are you going to allow the next person to do the same? There needs to be continuity. And this is from Marvin and Judy Thielen, 29834 Rose Court, Melrose, Minnesota, 56352. And that is all that we have.
Okay, thank you. And then if we could have comments from the applicant.
So we purchased this home in 2021, and we decided to renovate the property and rebuild the landscaping. We worked very closely with Nick at the county to re-landscape this property with buffers and wildflowers and everything else that Stearns County was asking for. That shed that he was talking about was on that property when we purchased it. It was there for well over 15 years. The complaint started out because of one of our neighbors had a complaint about the shed. The county came in and looked at everything on the property, which is their right, and said that we had to get a survey on it and figure out where the lot lines were and everything, because our neighbor kept moving the lot lines every year. Every year he'd get them closer and closer to that shed. And so we did the survey, we did the original survey. We found out that that one shed was too close to the property line. And we also had a shed that we didn't know was in the floodplain, that we needed to get it out of the floodplain up to 100 feet. So we contracted local contractors. We had them move those sheds. We had Cole come out and approve those, both where the new sheds are located. Then we also, part of this complaint, when which was started with the shed, was they sent me a letter saying that the deck wasn't permitted and that the house was closer to the lake than what was originally done in 2006. They said I had to send them a check for the permit and that it should be within 95 to 100 feet and it should be fine. I did that immediately, sent them a check, and then they passed it off to Rob in this office, who originally was the inspector for the county of 2006. That says on the permit that it was 100 feet back, which we looked at. And we wanted to build the deck because we remodeled the house and made it differently. We made them into bedrooms. And so we hired St. Rosa Lumber, Artisan Construction, who did a lot of our remodeling, did pretty much all our permits, except for plumbing and electrical. They pulled their own permits. And so we were a little surprised that the permit wasn't pulled up. When we found out that the permit wasn't pulled, I sent a check in for that right away. And then Cole passed off the deck to Rob, and Rob proceeded to deny it. So that's why we ended up with an after-the-fact variance application for you guys to consider. We had no intent to do anything outside of complying. We found that out after the fact, and that's why we are here to talk about it tonight.
Madam Chair, Angie Berg, Environmental Services. So I supervised both Rob and Cole and reviewed the entire process. To note, the 430 square foot addition was permitted by the department to meet the required setback, but it wasn't built to the required setback. And then secondly, related to the sheds, the applicant's been very cooperative to get those moved, had the property surveyed, so that's not an issue. And so the way I think you're probably seeing this is the addition was done by a prior owner, the deck was done by the current owner.
That's correct. Yep.
And if I may, with respect to part of the consideration here, I think what's important is I know the board has to or should be considering the good faith attempt, and I appreciate staff's input on that all the way through this process, Mr. Hotzler has been cooperating with the county to move the sheds, make sure that they're outside of the setback requirements, that they are compliant. And I would also add, in addition to add to the actions by Mr. Hotzler and his family, if you look at this landscaping that was done, part of the remodel in this property was that they were going to include new landscaping. And from day one, Mr. Hotzler and his family approached the county from the get-go to be able to say, what does the county want here? What do we want to do to make sure that the landscaping is compliant with all of the requirements by ordinance? And that's where the Hotzlers and the county work together to develop this. So I think it illustrates that the ongoing cooperation that the family has to try and make this property, to remodel it and make it an even better property on the lake shore. With respect to this deck, I would just reiterate that Mr. Hotzler's understanding is that the contractor who promised as part of the contract to pull that permit and didn't. So now at this point, he's more or less left holding the bag, unfortunately. But as soon as he learned about that, he immediately issued the check as the county asked, and is now going through this variance process. I will refer the board, if possible. Mr. Hotzler had made a previous comment that in the 2006 construction site permit checklist, the county did go through the process to say or determine that the new addition from 2006 was going to be compliant and 100 feet back from the ordinary high water line. And as we learned or heard again tonight, those don't normally change. So I guess my one of the things I'm curious about is now we're looking at a high water line where the house is closer. And yes, I understand that the original owner or the prior owners built the addition bigger than the permit, but it doesn't seem to account for that much intrusion into that 100-foot section. So I guess I'll leave it at that, but at the same time, this was something that Mr. Hotzler inherited, actually both issues he inherited. So we'd be asking the board to grant the variance.
Can we see a copy of that permit?
Do you want?
Madam Chair, which permit, Amy?
The 2006 one.
Deb, can you put the overhead on, please?
This would be the inspection report from that permit request. And when I talked with Mr. Spitzley about this, because he was the one who actually issued that permit at that time, and he's still with the county, what he did is it was kind of octagonal, as you can see on there, and he just squared off that furthest out dimension, and he measured that to be 100 feet. Now, as we go through this, I'm going to point out the fact that they actually proposed a deck on that south side. Can I borrow that?
Right.
So they wanted to put a deck on this south side, which would have been right here. And Mr. Spitzley told them they couldn't because that would be encroaching into that 100-foot setback, because the actual structure that they were proposing was right at 100 feet. And so when they actually went through, our thought is that they just built the whole structure at that, where the deck was supposed to be on there. And so that's why it is now encroaching into that setback and why he is here to fix that issue.
They also put that stairway on it and had it go down to the lower deck, which we ripped off right away. He said that we aren't going to have that. So we got rid of that right away because we thought it was crazy to have a stairway up to the second floor with a door there. So we got rid of that.
Are there any other questions regarding this permit, or did that answer the question that you had, Amy?
Yeah, that was very helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, just for clarification, the deck is the deck that's physically on the house, not the patio area, right?
No. So this was that project from 2006. Now, Angie, if you could go back, or if you could, I'll turn that off. How do we turn that off? Whoa.
Yes, we're done.
We're done.
Once a
Meeting adjourned.
Once a meeting.
I think I can answer that for you. The deck that we're talking about is the one on the second floor.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
one up on the second floor
Yeah,
with the
if you
patio
look-
doors.
If you look at
Yes.
your plan there, it's
Yep.
that one correct right
Okay,
there.
that's what I
Yes.
thought we were
That's
talking
the
about. I
one-
just want to make sure.
That's the one. Sorry, that's the one that I believe was constructed
Correct.
by
Yes.
Arnson Construction or
Exactly.
whoever
That's
you
where
had
we-
mentioned.
Exactly.
So it
had done
has
that.
nothing to do with the landscaped patio with.
Nothing.
No.
Nothing.
Okay, that's what
Nothing.
I was thinking, but I wanted to make
Yep.
sure.
We put the patio doors in the room, I'll call it to the east, and then the one that's facing south
So
or
it's this
west,
one
you
right
know,
here.
yeah, right in the corner there.
Okay, that's
We
what
put
I
those
thought.
two in,
All right.
Because originally, if you're the one that you're seeing, the patio doors that you're seeing on the right there. Oops, yeah, here.
Little red button.
Little red button? Okay.
Right, so that deck
That
is
deck-
not any closer to the lake than that octagonal.
Correct. In fact, it's probably a
Probably
little bit behind it, but the
behind
lake
that.
juts in a little bit where that is.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, so if you look at the survey there.
Sure, okay. Well, it's because,
89.79 would be
Right.
the addition that was put on in 2006. And the deck, actually, we have 89.3, so it's, or 88.
The closest point.
Yeah,
Because the
88.
lake
I'm
juts
sorry,
in right
yes.
there.
Oh, the
to
lake
the left,
comes
because
in
the
right
lake
there.
juts in a little bit
okay,
there.
all right.
So a question on the new deck, the newer deck. Andy, can you go back to the picture of the house? So the window that's facing us.
Yes.
That's a patio door window?
It's a patio door window that goes into, that used to be the previous owner's master bedroom. We took that out and we made it into a bunk room for our grandkids.
And then the wall that we can't see,
The middle one. Yeah.
is that a whole wall or is there a window door there?
There's a patio door into that too.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so are there any other questions from staff?
So just
go ahead.
a question on, so that's a patio, so there's no contribution to the structural integrity of the house.
No.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. So is there anyone in the audience that would like to say something? Yeah.
My name is Mary Jefferson. We are property owners to property. So if you look at that picture, we are to the left. And I made the effort to come here tonight to express my strong support that this variance addition that was constructed, the 463 footage, constructed almost 20 years ago. We are by far the closest. Oh, it's turned off?
Yes.
We are by far the closest neighbor to this structure. It does not impede our sight lines to the lake in any way, shape, or form. We thought it was a beautiful addition, and we've been perfectly happy with it for almost 20 years. The small, tasteful deck that Mark and Jane added, quite frankly, if Craig and I want to see if they're on the deck, we have to walk into the lake. So it is not visually impairing to us at all. So I just wanted to express my strong support for this variance.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, can you please state your name and address again for the record so we can get it on tape? Thank you.
Mary Jefferson, and my address is 43925 Birch Cove Road, Freeport.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other discussion from board members before we close the public hearing?
So just a quick question for the staff. I don't know if I'm not seeing it in the report. It's late, my eyes are done. So when we're looking, usually we see a percentage of ordinance they're missing.
Deviation.
Deviation, thank you. Ooh. We're looking at what? This is like 92, 93% in compliance, or?
Well, the closest point of the deck is 88 feet. So that would be what, a 12% deviation?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sorry if I don't recall if I put that in the staff report. If I didn't, I apologize.
No, that's it. It was, you had to find it. It's fine. We're good.
And so is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
Okay, second by George. Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes, and Rob?
Yes.
Okay. I have just one after the fact, so apparently we're doing both together. Does anybody have any objections to that?
No.
Okay. So this will be to leave.
Madam Chair, maybe
Yes.
we should just confirm with the applicant and the applicant's attorney. As you probably saw from tonight, sometimes applicants want them split into two. Do you have a preference?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Madam Chair, just for the record, I would like to see these split, but with the 4-to-1, we'll do it together.
I would too.
You'd like to see it split?
Yep.
I'm
I'm
fine with
fine.
them together.
I'm fine with splitting up. If that's what you.
Together is fine for me.
Okay, so 2 together, 3 split, so we'll, I guess, split it then.
Do you have copies?
Well, I
Otherwise,
can-
I can give you copies here.
Oh, okay. Okay, so let's do,
2006.
Let's do the old one first.
so the dwelling edition first, right?
Yeah, the 463.
So to leave as constructed a 463 square foot residential dwelling addition 89 feet from the ordinary high water level of Big Birch Lake, classified as recreational development. Okay, number 1, is the proposed use allowed in the zoning district in which the subject property is located?
Madam Chair, yes, it's allowed in R1.
Okay, just a second here, Amy, yes. George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Rob?
Yes.
Okay. Number 2, is the variance in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls?
Madam Chair, I believe on this one, we're looking at the 2006. It's an 11% roughly deviation from the official controls. It's also elevated, so it's not on the ground. So I believe it is in harmony. It's in harmony with the general purpose of the control.
Okay.
Madam Chair, since our chair isn't here, Jill's usually really good about remembering A through D to remind you to rope A through D into your consideration as well. Okay, thank you.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I was just going to comment for number 2 to say that if we looked at E, where we say is the county's benefit outweighed by the applicant's burden, I think for 12%, or on this one it'd be what, 11% deviation, for them to remove that part of the house would be an extreme burden, and I'm not sure what the benefit for the county would be in asking them to remove that portion of the house that's been there significantly a long time. So I am going to say yes to number 2 as well. George?
Yes, and I would add the county would be crazy to try to do that.
Right, you're right. Amy?
Yes.
And Rob?
Yes.
Number 3, the variance request is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Madam Chair, I'm going to say yes under living goal number 3, support housing options that give people in all life stages.
All right, so we have a yes for number 3. George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. And Rob?
No, under Lakeshore Living Policy number 1, to limit the impacts of additional shoreland development.
Okay, number 1, no. Okay. Number 4, is the property owner proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by an official control?
I mean, yes, it's reasonable to have the addition on the house. It's been there before he purchased it.
All right. George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Rob?
Yes.
Number 5, is the plight of the landowner due to circumstances unique to the property not created by the landowner?
Madam Chair, this particular part was installed by a previous landowner, so it is unique to the property that was acquired by the landowner after it was installed.
Okay. George?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Amy?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Okay, number 6, will the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? I'm going to say yes, because it's been this way for quite a number of years already. George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Okay, and the last one. The need for the variance involves more than economic considerations.
Madam Chair, a couple of things here. We didn't talk about economics. And as was talked at a previous item, this is a structural functional part of the house. So removal of this to bring it in compliance would be a substantial burden to the landowner, as you identified earlier.
All right. George?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Amy?
Yes.
And Rob?
Yes.
All right. Seeing all of them in the majority of yes, I'd be looking for a motion to approve.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the 2006 addition dwelling.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Rob?
Yes.
I'm a yes. And Jason?
Yes.
All right. So that part of your request has been approved.
Thank you.
So now we will look at the after the fact to leave as constructed 168 square foot, 88 feet from the ordinary high water level of Birch Lake, classified as recreational development. Okay, and as we would remember those 5 after the fact stipulations that we look at. Number 1, is the proposed use allowed in the zoning district in which the subject property is located?
Madam Chair, yes, decks are allowed.
Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Amy?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Okay. Number 2, is the variance in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls? I'm going to say yes, it is, for the reason that it's a minimal variance, and actually it does not encroach on the lake any closer really than the rest of the structure that is, because of our recent after the fact, which is that it is approved, the recent distance, and so it's not encroaching any closer than that.
I also think of the burden it would be to tear it apart. I agree with you, yes.
Okay. So George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
And Rob?
Yes.
Okay, number 3, is the variance request consistent with the comprehensive plan?
Madam Chair, I'm going to go with yes under the living goal number 3, as stated previously before.
Okay. George?
Yes.
Jason?
I'm going to say no with the one that Rob had given previously. I can't remember which one it was, but that's the... Do you remember which one it was?
Was it Lakeshore Living?
It was the Lakeshore Living
one.
I think it was number 1.
Lakeshore Living number 1?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say yes. And Rob?
I'm going to agree with Jason, and it's pretty much self-inflicted. You can blame the contractor, but still the homeowner is responsible.
All right. So we have 2 noes and 3 yeses on number 3.
And Madam Chair, I'm sorry, Deb was talking to me because it wasn't clear which you were acting on right now. So just to be clear, when you do your vote, just to be clear, it's for the deck?
Yes, for the 168 square foot deck.
Perfect.
88 feet from the OHW
Thank you.
well.
And what was the comprehensive plan goal and policy?
Living goal number 3.
For
in support.
In support, yes. Number 3 and number 1 on the negative side.
Thank you.
Number 4, is the property owner proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by official controls?
Madam Chair, using a deck is a reasonable use.
Okay, Jason?
Number 4, yes.
I'm a yes. Amy?
Yes.
And Rob?
Yes.
Okay, number 5, the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property not created by the landowner.
Madam Chair, I'm going to say no on this one because this was an addition by the landowner, not a critical structural feature of the house.
Okay, so we have a no by Jason. George?
I'm going to say yes. I don't believe the county's benefits are outweighed by the burden of the applicant to remove the deck.
Okay, and I would agree for that same reason. Amy?
Yes.
And Rob?
No, the plate is the landowner's responsibility. And the setback is 100 feet. It's not 88 feet. The state guidelines are 100 feet.
Okay. Number 6, will the variance maintain the essential character of the locality?
Madam Chair, I'm going to say yes. It's been there for quite a long time, and there's other decks and structures similar.
Okay, Jason?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Amy?
Yes, I'd like to add support of the neighbor.
Okay. And Rob?
Yes.
And the need for the variance involves more than economic considerations. I don't believe economics were, even discussed for this. So I'm going to say yes. George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And Rob?
Yes.
All right, seeing that the majority is yes on all 7, I'd be looking for a motion to approve.
Madam Chair, I'll move to approve the deck.
All right.
Can we, as per staff, this is the 160, whatever the...
The 168 deck,
Yeah.
the raised elevated deck.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I will second it.
All right. Rob?
No.
No.
2 noes. And George made the motion. Yes, yes, and I am a yes. So motion is approved.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the deck variance.
Didn't we just do that?
We did.
That's what we just did.
The other one.
Oh.
I'll make a motion to approve.
No, we just voted on.
Oh.
We just did that.
We got both of them.
Okay.
Yep,
We're
we
good.
got him. We got him.
It's nap time.
We got him. Okay, so
Could I ask a question of the board here? Those who said no, what would you propose the owner does with the deck, on the deck issue?
So in comparison to the larger structure that was part of the house, there was the 4-foot walkway they could have put in, or they could have removed the deck. I mean,
And put what there?
There was
big
nothing
old
there.
space, a big old empty space.
There was nothing there when they bought the house.
That may be true, but does the benefits of the county outweigh the burden to the applicant in this
Then
particular case?
why apply for a permit? Come in afterwards and say, I'm sorry, and
I
get
agree,
it.
it's an imperfect system, but to come in and have them remove the deck, and a 4-foot deck would not accommodate both sliding glass doors, patio doors.
But that's owner installed too. The owner did those.
So I just want to point that out. I think it's sometimes it's unreasonable to say no when the situation already exists. If it's not built yet, I have a different perspective on it, but when it's already built, to expect somebody to tear it out and do something else, I think is unreasonable when it's only a matter of 10 feet, 12 feet off the variance.
Did last month.
Criteria.
But it costs more to rip it out.
I'll
Fix it.
update you on a lawsuit that we just had filed against us on a denial once you're ready.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's approve the minutes first, and then we'll go to your update on that.
Madam Chair, I'll
Approve the
minutes.
August, well, first we need to approve the meeting of the August. The minutes for the August meeting.
Madam Chair, I'll approve the August minute meeting.
Okay, do we have a second?
And I'll second that.
Okay, George?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Our next meeting is October 10th. How many?
2 variances and another appeal, believe it or not.
Okay.
2 variances and an appeal.
That was interesting.
And
All
the
right.
appeal is of a highway decision, so the county engineer will be here representing that one.
So
Okay.
that was, do you recall the Einerson property on 72, they wanted a garage,
71.
or 71, yes.
Is that what that easement?
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
the neighbors and them share a driveway, right?
Mm-hmm.
County Highway issued them a permit for their new driveway, but told them that they had to remove
You need the mic.
what?
We're still
You're
on
not
record.
speaking into the mic. Yeah, we're still on.
Oh, and so County Highway issued them their permit for their driveway, but they said that they have to remove their portion of their driveway and their neighbor's portion.
And I'm going to ask you guys not to comment on that right
Don't
now.
comment on it right now.
No
but
discussion. That's what's coming.
coming
But
up.
that's what's coming up. Okay.
This will be
And that
fun.
would, they were in the curve?
We're not going to ask you to talk about that right now.
Okay. But just so I'm thinking of the right property, though, they're kind of up on a hill, right in the curve?
It's right before the bridge.
Okay.
yeah.
Then I know which property you're talking about. Right. Yeah.
This was just a
Okay.
teaser to make sure we come, right? Yeah.
No, it was just background information of what's coming. That's
Yes.
what's coming next month.
Okay. All right. So then an update on a recent
Yes, so the
legislation
county,
or
the county has
litigation.
a timely appeal on the Mark Kramer's request on Big Fish Lake. So he's appealing the decision of the 2 by 20-foot addition on the cabin. He's not appealing the denial of the screen porches. So I know Bonnie's been around, maybe I don't know who's all been around for appeals. Board of Adjustment hasn't had one in a while, but, so the county has insurance, it gets turned over to our insurance trust. It's an attorney that I've worked with for a long, long time. So he has the case, we met with him the other day, and at some point, Paul Reavers, our attorney, will come and update you as the Board of Adjustment, because you're your own entity. If there would be any settlement proposals, they would be brought to you in a closed session. If there aren't any settlement talks, then we go to court eventually. But it's going to be a while. These usually take 18 months.
Okay.
So,
You haven't, there's another appeal pending from Coronas, right?
so that's
The attorney out
that
there on
one's
the lake?
different. So
Oh,
okay, so if somebody gets denied a variance, they have 30 days to appeal the decision to district court, right? That's what happened in the Mark Kramer situation. If somebody gets a the Board of Adjustment denies a variance and they don't appeal, then the county has to sue them. Because that means they need to comply, right? So that's what is occurring on.
Oh, because they haven't,
They
he
didn't
hasn't acted
appeal.
on it.
Right.
And so now we have to sue to make him act on it.
That's correct.
Now, does
That's
this,
on Lake Cronus.
so,
It's in the
process?
court docket, which it's going to probably be another 12 months.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So with that, if it is, if the variance denial is upheld in the court, does the county recoup any legal expenses?
You mean if I
If
see
he's
what you're
told he
saying.
has to do it?
That's usually negotiated. I'm not sure.
Okay, I'm just curious.
It
of that.
depends. We can recoup if that's something that the attorneys want.
Okay.
And agree to. That's
Okay.
usually not part of the Board of Adjustment's decision.
No, but I'm just curious.
It has happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
Okay. Well, I'll probably be done before then anyway, so.
Well, I'll update you.
Okay.
I better be done before then.
When are you done, Bonnie?
Well, isn't my term up this year?
I don't know. We should probably figure that out for you all next month, huh?
My
Okay.
husband told me it was, so.
Oh, don't
I
listen
just
to
went by
Ken.
him.
Don't listen to
He,
him.
you know him. He's up on.
I know him, yes.
Yes, he's up on everything.
Thanks
Every
for the
little
reminder, though.
detail.
I'll look at that and see who's up for next year.
No, the end of this year.
Yeah.
End of this year. Yeah.
And I did want to share that Dan, I called him right before the meeting started, and he apologized for not being here. He had told Jill he wasn't going to be here, and obviously Jill's not here, so Jill didn't tell us that he wasn't going to be here, so.
Oh, yeah.
He apologizes. He has a family issue he's dealing with.
So do we need four for a quorum, because we're a 7-member board?
Right.
Is that- Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm frustration, irritation, decision of appeals from the staff.
adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Anybody?
Boy, this might have been
Meeting is adjourned.